Hello everyone, for Are You Fired TV, I'm Drew Majeski.
And I'm Rachel Popa. Coming up on today's show, we're discussing Chicago's gubernatorial race and the fading memory of the Holocaust.
Also on today's show, we discuss Chicago sports. But first, every day there's new updates on the investigation into the Trump administration's ties to Russia. With the latest news on the investigation, Are You Fired TV talked to political science expert David Ferris.
I'm David Ferris. I'm an associate professor of political science at Roosevelt University. I'm a columnist for The Week magazine. Any sense that a hostile foreign power has interfered with our election processes has the effect of diminishing sort of public trust and public support and the integrity of our elections. So it would be a very negative thing for our democracy if ordinary voters and ordinary people believed that those processes or the integrity of those elections had been compromised. So I don't think we know whether they were or they weren't, but I think it's very important to find out exactly what happened in terms of Russian efforts to influence the election, any hacking of voting machines that took place or was attempted, and also to know for sure any sort of relationship that the Trump campaign may or may not have had with the Russians themselves, because it would be pretty explosive to find out that the victory of one of our campaigns depended, at least in part, on the assistance of Russia. So I think that there are reasons, from a partisan perspective, that Democrats want to know the answer to this question. There's also just some real concerns from the perspective of democratic theory and sort of confidence in our election processes. Well, I think if we uncovered sort of irrefutable evidence that senior figures on the Trump campaign, so like somebody like Brad Parscale, the digital director, anybody like Jared Kushner or the campaign managers, if we have evidence that those folks were working with Russian agents, either to steal the DNC emails or John Podesta's emails, to plant propaganda on Facebook or Twitter, if we have evidence of that kind of work taking place within the Trump campaign, I think that there's going to be real pressure on the president either to resign or there may be efforts to impeach him for that behavior. We don't really have a mechanism to undo the results of a presidential election, So even if we find out, that there was massive collusion happening and that we think it swung the result of the election, we're not going to have a new one. You know what I mean? Like, the president will serve out his term or he will be replaced by his vice president. I think those are probably the worst consequences that you would see for President Trump. And in terms of the people that may have worked directly with Russia to influence our elections, it is possible that they would be in criminal jeopardy. So I could see some people being indicted. I could see some pressure on Trump to resign. And then it's really, the findings of the investigation will really be a political issue, even more so than a legal one, because impeachment itself is a political process whose stipulations are not actually very well spelled out in the Constitution. It just says high crimes and misdemeanors. So it's up to us to determine what is or is not a high crime or a high misdemeanor, I guess. And so it would depend on the kind of evidence that's unearthed. If the president didn't know that his campaign was doing these things, I think that he will survive in office. And of course, it's possible that we will not uncover this evidence at all because it didn't happen. That is, that we may not find that figures in the Trump campaign worked directly with Russians. They may have unwittingly done the bidding of some of these actors, or they may have accidentally shared information or revealed information with Russians. But I think we have to be aware of the possibility that they might not have done so on purpose. But we simply don't know the kind of information that the Mueller investigation has, unless and until he releases a report about it. We're all in the dark together, trying to figure out what it is exactly that he's uncovered. The relationship in recent years has taken a turn for the worse. When the Cold War ended, I think there was a moment of opportunity for us to have a different kind of relationship with Russia. One of the problems is that the settlement, sort of the grand Cold War settlement that we saw happen, really disadvantaged Russia when we look at it, I think, in a historical perspective. The Soviet Union broke up on terms that I don't think that contemporary Russians would have signed up for. And the US worked very closely with President Yeltsin to reform the political system and the economic system very suddenly. And the result of that reform was a lot of economic suffering in Russia. And the country really didn't begin to recover from that shock until the late 1990s and early 2000s. And by the time that happened, a lot of Russians blamed us for their economic plight. They were dissatisfied with the sort of economic and political model that was being offered by the US. And Russia also began to recover some of its sort of geopolitical weight in the world. And so Russia was very weak in the 1990s, and since then has gotten somewhat stronger, not to the point where Russian power can sort of directly challenge the United States, but Russia has sort of returned to its status, its pre-existing, Cold War status as a significant power in the system. Vladimir Putin himself appears to view U.S.-Russian relations as part of a global competition over influence, and sort of like offering a different kind of political model, this sort of authoritarian capitalism, as an alternative to American democratic capitalism. And so I think President Putin sees Russia as the potential leader of a different kind of global order. In that sense, I think the rivalry is serious right now. So we're really competing over 10 or 15 countries that are closer to Russia than they are to us. And the Russians see sort of breaking up American influence and getting America out of Europe as one of its key national security goals, because that would allow them to more capably influence political events in places like Germany or Italy or France, mostly by electing people who are friendlier to the Russian agenda, who are hostile to the EU, and who may share Russia's vision for that world order. Partly, I think that was just a chaos operation to sow confusion and distrust in America's political institutions. But I also think it had a lot to do with the sort of foreign policy vision that President Trump was offering. And that was, better relationships with Russia, hostile to the European Union. President Trump, of course, supported the Brexit movement in the UK. And I think that the Russians see any political development in the US that drives a wedge between America and her European allies as sort of broadly benefiting Russia in the long run.
Chicago is gearing up for the governor's race this November. RU Fire TV got reactions from RU students about the governor's race. The Democratic candidate is J.B. Pritzker, who beat out Chris Kennedy and Daniel Biss. The Republican candidate is current Governor Bruce Rauner, who beat out Jeannie Ives for the Republican nomination.
I voted for Biss, and Biss didn't win. So I am not unhappy with Pritzker, but Biss was like the more progressive candidate, so I was really hoping he would win.
Well, I don't know. It's been I've noticed a lot of mudslinging, I think. So the campaign's been pretty personal. I've noticed that, which I don't particularly care for. I guess you could say I'm a little disenchanted with the whole thing now. I feel like the current governor has let a lot of people down, Governor Rauner, because I don't know, I think he didn't really do what he claimed to represent.
I guess I think it's not a great campaign in terms of running on the issues. It seems more personal.
Well, I'm not fully aware of all the candidates. I just know, from social media, what I hear. I know J.B. Pritzker seems like a good guy, but I know he accepts a lot of donations, and there's this whole thing of him being a billionaire, and is he really for the people, or is he for his donors? So I can't really vote because I'm not a citizen, so I don't really pay attention that much, but I know the importance of voting.
Next on RU Fire TV, a history professor gives his perspective on the fading memory of the Holocaust. All that and more when we return.
Dallas, St. Louis, Nashville, Tuscaloosa. All major cities to feel the destruction caused by a direct hit from a tornado. Is Chicago next? It's not a question of if, but when, and the clock is ticking. Learn what to do now at ready.illinois.gov to become tornado ready.
At the time, I just wasn't thinking. I used social media to vent. I wish I would have thought about the effects of scaring people. I didn't mean for that to happen. People took it as a terrorist threat. The university got shut down. I got arrested by the FBI. And now, I don't know what my future looks like. I search my name on the web almost every day and look at the stuff. It's not going away. Think before you post.
It's gonna be just plain hot out there. So stay cool in your mood and keep your eyes on the road when you're traveling. Hey, this weekend lot.
Every year, almost 40 children die of heat stroke after being forgotten in a vehicle. In 70-degree weather, it takes only minutes for the inside of a car to heat up like an oven. At 104 degrees, heat stroke begins, followed by loss of consciousness.
Should go an hour and a half or so.
Leave without your child, live without them forever. Look before you lock, brought to you by Kids in Cars.
With the memory of the Holocaust fading, we sat down with history professors Chris Chulos and Margaret Rung about Holocaust education for the next generation.
So my name is Chris Chulos. I'm an associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm also a professor of history at Roosevelt University, and I teach modern European history classes, and that's primarily the 19th and 20th centuries. Schools in Chicago and the suburbs teach the Holocaust from a very young age, and a lot of major cities also teach the Holocaust at a very young age, introducing the concept as early as kindergarten, and then reading at first simplified excerpts from the Anne Frank diary and other books, and then through K through 5, then middle school, and certainly in high school, they start taking on less simplified than the original document itself. They supplement it with other readings like The Book Thief, for example, Boy in Striped Pajamas, and it just depends on the local curriculum. So it's front and center in the standard school curriculum in the Chicago area, many metro areas. Students know about that. I mean, they go home and talk to their parents. I wouldn't say every community has discussion, because that wouldn't be true. But given the fact that we put so much emphasis on the Holocaust and learning it from kindergarten onward, I'm astonished that people would not know what it was or not realize it was fairly recent history, when it happened, where it happened, and so forth. Distance from a historical event can always impact popular knowledge, right? But popular knowledge is not just what you get from pop culture. Popular knowledge is knowledge that, say, society values, so you learn it in the curriculum at school. So yeah, time can make a difference. Usually time impacts more the emotional connection to the past. So as we start seeing, the last, 100 or a couple 100,000, maybe even Holocaust survivors die, we don't have that personal human connection with the Holocaust. So we'll continue to have that with the Holocaust, but once those grandparents die, it becomes a matter of book learning, really, or museum learning. In any case, there's no shortage of activity, there's no shortage of funding, there's no shortage of attempts to increase people's knowledge of the Holocaust. So why is it people don't know? I'm not really sure. I mean, that to me, I'd like to know where the knowledge gaps are happening. Can they be addressed? But I don't know that it's just distance.
My name is Margaret Rung, and I'm a professor of history here at Roosevelt University, and I also direct the Center for New Deal Studies. First is, of course, concern that young people don't know about one of the seminal events of the 20th century, and one that had such profound repercussions for the rest of the 20th century and into the 21st century. I felt that, for one thing, students at different levels of education wouldn't necessarily be learning about the Holocaust in their schools, and so it's not too surprising that at some level students or young people don't know about the Holocaust, right? So unless your family was affected by it, you're not going to be necessarily talking about it at home, and so you are relying primarily on textbooks or getting it through your education. In Illinois, it's mandatory to teach the Holocaust as part of the curriculum. So I feel comfortable that students who go to public schools in Illinois will leave school knowing about the Holocaust. My daughter is in 7th grade, and she knew about the Holocaust in 4th grade. So I'm not so concerned that as a historical event that it'll evaporate from the curriculum or textbooks. But I do think it points to a phenomenon that occurs with any historical event, which is that as the generations who lived through that period pass away, the stories also pass away. Partly it's generational, just as I said, because more and more people, as time passes, fewer and fewer people are participants, and more people aren't being exposed to it through their own families or, hearing about it from survivors, or people who participated in the, for example, veterans, others who were in the war.
In a city known for its food, deep dish pizza tops the list. RU Fire TV reporter Jeffrey Rice asked Chicagoans what their top picks are for the best slice.
My name is Jeffrey Weiss from RU Fire TV. Many people here in Chicago have different opinions on what the best pizza is, whether it's Giordano's, Illuminati's, and many others.
My favorite pizza is in a suburb called Northbrook. I know a ton of people talk about Illuminati's being their favorite. It's so thick, but this pizza has a special cornmeal crust, and it's so thin, and it's just the best amount of cheese, and the toppings are just amazing. And I remember going there when I was little all the time with my family. They also have a ton of other great food. Like, I know their French onion soup is amazing, but their pizza is where it's at. It's so good. It's my favorite pizza. That's where we would go for our Sunday nights.
My favorite Chicago pizza, Illuminati's. Illuminati's is like the best pizza. Deep dish, like very juicy, nice crust, very hard, not too hard though. Just like you can bite into it, get the nice crunch in your mouth. I love the juiciness of the sauce. It's pretty lit. I love going there with my friends. It's a place I could just hang out with, get some work done, or just like mess around when I'm bored. I mean, it's Chicago. It's a very good Chicago place to go. It's a very Chicago-y thing to do.
So my favorite pizza place is Giordano's. Me too. I went there once when it was super nice out. There was a lot of sun, and we got to sit on the porch and eat deep dish, and that was one of the highlights of my fall quarter.
Coming up after the break, it's baseball season in Chicago. Stay tuned to see what local fans have to say about the season.
Queen is just my everything.
His smile did it. His smile, his eyes, his knowledge. My landlord, he decided that he wanted me to move based on the fact that I was transgender. Let's just respect people in everyday life for just being human.
Every 3 seconds, someone is abused by a partner.
2 of every 3 incidents of sexual assault go unreported.
Chicago says no more.
No more.
No more. Chicago says no more excuses.
No more silence.
No more violence.
No more. Period.
If you or someone you know needs help, please call for confidential assistance.
It's time to end domestic violence and sexual assault once and for all.
Cubs season underway, reporter Ian Jackson talked to fans about how the season's going and what they expect for the rest of the year.
Hi, my name is Ian Jackson from RU Fire TV. Baseball season just got underway and Chicagoans are hopeful for another World Series win.
To be honest, I'm a real big fan of the pitching so far with Quintana. And then Morrow played a couple games back and he was playing really, really well. And then Montgomery's playing well too. And Lester is a real big, not an X factor, but as long as he stays healthy, then we're bound to win a lot more games with him on.
Honestly, I have not tuned in to many games. However, I do know that the Cubs have reputation to sort of live up to now since they won the World Series last year. I think it's possible for them if they, if they train well, and they run the right place during the game, and they hit well, they pitch well, they should have a good shot.
I mean, it's early. It's early in the season. They had a lot of rain-out dates yet, and hopeful. Right now I'm hopeful, because that's all I can be.
Next on Are You Fired TV News, we talk to someone you should know. Stay tuned after the break.
I've been delivering Meals on Wheels to Leon for 13 years.
It's always a pleasure to see you.
Leon has definitely inspired me to put more into my relationships. He really cared for his wife, who was ailing for quite a while, in such a touching way that inspired me to be a better person.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org.
America, let's do lunch. This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Reporter Ladarius Tunstall sat down with Anna Marie Tabo, a local motivational speaker.
Good afternoon, Ms. Tabo.
Hello.
What is it that you do?
I do a lot of things. I am a pro bodybuilder. I'm a personal trainer, health coach, life coach, and I also am an image coach for Hooters Corporate.
How long have you been doing this?
As far as being in the service industry, I've been doing that for, the better part of my life, 10 years. As far as being a bodybuilder, I did not start my journey with bodybuilding until about 2 years ago. And then from then on, that kind of morphed me into what I'm doing right now. So the past couple years, I want to say I've transitioned to all of everything and above, and then that led to photo shoots and everything else. So
what led you to be doing what it is that you're currently doing?
I've always felt better living a life that was healthier, because when you take care of your body, it's like you're taking care of your whole. It starts with your body and then your mind, and it's just they all intertwine. So in order to take care of your mind, you also have to take care of yourself too. That's kind of what motivated me. There were times where I've experienced slumps where I wasn't feeling motivated, and I felt like I was not getting my best out of life and reaching my full potential. So I was more, motivated once I figured out what I wanted to do. So, but that's when I was in a slump, when you don't have a purpose and you don't have any direction, then you're just going around aimlessly. So once I kind of found my niche, which I've always been all about being on stage and trying to inspire others. Once I found my best avenue for doing that, that's when I got hooked and I just kept going with it.
What are you most passionate and excited about?
My motto is I aspire to inspire. So as far as helping other people, although I am a personal trainer and I try to help people, live their best life physically, like I said, it all intertwines. It all connects to each other, mentally too. So I like helping people reach their full potential physically, and then it kind of transfers to the other areas of their life. So having people feel good about themselves. Once you're taking care of yourself, you not only feel better, but you feel more confident in doing other tasks when you see what you're capable of physically.
Did you have any life-altering experiences that led you on the path to what you're currently doing right now? I've
always been an athlete. I've always been a performing artist and all that, and I know that I have been influenced from seeing other shows. And I went to my first bodybuilding show maybe, I want to say 5 years ago, and then I just kept going. You know, I was always a gym rat, and then I would see these other people that come in, they were competitors, and I kind of held them in a pedestal, and they had this aura around them that made me want to be around them. Like, I was drawn to that positive energy. There was something about people that competed that inspired me to push harder and to become a better person. So when I first went to a show, that's when that was my aha moment. I went there and I was just like, I want to do that. I want to do that for sure. Well, what's funny was after my first show, I ended up winning it. It was just one of those things that was on my bucket list, and I ended up winning it and getting my pro card. I didn't expect to do that well, and I thought that after that everything was just going to fall into place. And what's interesting is that after that I actually kind of I felt like I was living such a fast-paced life that I ended up burning out and like falling into another like episode of depression, anxiety, and I kind of just hid from the world. And it made me question almost my identity. I'm like, am I a bodybuilder anymore? Am I going to do this? Because I was supposed to go do 2 shows, right? And I never ended up going through with those 2 shows because I was having health issues. My coach pulled me out, and he said, you know what? It's okay. You know, sometimes you make plans, but life gets in the way of those plans. So, and I played the victim for a little bit, but I knew there was a reason why those circumstances were happening to me. And it took a lot for me to get myself back up. But when I was going through my last show was Natural Olympia of November of last year, so that's 2017. And that was even though I've done the process before, that was a lot harder because I had fallen down. Sometimes when you make it on top right away, it's hard to maintain that. So I felt like all this pressure from the public to look a certain way, to act a certain way. God forbid I wanted a cookie. I feel like no one could watch me eat a cookie. You know, I thought everything was going to fall into place, but it didn't. So then it challenged almost my why. I had to re-dig and re-find myself and create the life that I wanted for myself. So sometimes the universe just kind of puts you in situations to kind of test how much you really want something. Because sometimes you can get lost in all that. The road to success is not just an elevator up, you know. I've read somewhere, it's not an elevator, you gotta take the stairs. And it's a narrow path, and you're going up and down and like side to side, around all these obstacles. So, but that tests how badly you want it.
Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Tabo.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching this edition of Are You Fired TV. I'm Drew Majeski.
And I'm Rachel Popa. Have a good day.